The United Kingdom is quietly doing what Vladimir Putin always feared most: rebuilding hard power, knitting Europe together, and arming Ukraine with exactly the tools that ruin Russia's plans. This is not the swaggering Britain of imperial nostalgia. It's a sharper, colder Britain, part accountant, part street fighter, who looked across the continent in 2022 and decided to rearm for a long, ugly century. And here's the twist. It's working. Russian planners now have to map British missiles they can't see, British drones they can't stop, and British-led coalitions they can't split. If you listen closely, you can hear metal being cut in Barrow and Furness, and guidance packages being bolted onto warheads in Bolton. Moscow hears it too. Start with a simple truth. The UK is committing to spend more on defence, faster, for longer. London's target is 2.5% of GDP on defence, and here's the kicker, brought forward to 2027, then sustained. That's billions more flowing into ships, jets, missiles, munitions, and the factories to build them. In Parliament, ministers framed it as the biggest sustained increase since the Cold War. This isn't rhetoric. It's a budget line with teeth.
UK rearmament. In the Army, the Challenger 3 programme takes 148 ageing Challenger 2s and rebuilds them into 4th-generation main battle tanks. New turret, 120mm L55A1 smoothbore gun, modern armour, digital backbone. Trials are underway now, with full operational capability by 2030 if the schedule holds. Alongside it comes Boxer, the 8-wheeled workhorse of the Army's deep recon and rapid punch era. Hundreds of vehicles flowing into units through the late 2020s. Yes, delays and integration headaches exist, but the direction is unmistakable. Fewer museum pieces, more steel that works. On the air side, the RAF is quietly turning its Typhoon fleet into something distinctly nastier. The ECRS Mk2 AESA radar isn't just a sensor. It's an electronic warfare sledgehammer that can blind, jam, and hunt while tracking targets across air and ground. Flight trials began from Wharton in late 2024. Funding in 2025 keeps production on track for initial units late this decade. Pair that with Meteor beyond visual range missiles and the forthcoming Spear family of precision munitions, and the Typhoon's future is less legacy fighter, more Predator with a laptop. Meanwhile, the F-35 program remains the crown jewel of stealth strike, even as auditors shout about spares, crews, and sortie rates. The strategy is blunt. Fix the sustainment, grow the fleet, and put more Lightnings to sea with the carriers. Expanded air and naval capabilities. At sea, the Royal Navy is replacing Cold War rust with modern bite. Type 26 City-class and Type 31 frigates are the backbone of a renewed surface fleet, while the Navy just fired the Naval Strike Missile in British service for the first time. Range, stealth, sea-skimming terror for any adversary surface group. A few years ago, the RN's anti-ship punch looked thin. Today, it's back, and it's interoperable with allied fleets from Norway to Poland. In the near future, expect Dragonfire lasers to start appearing on decks, and a next-gen Anglo-French long-range strike missile to shadow the fleet. If you're planning to park a Corvette in the North Sea and act tough, best not do it within 100 miles of a Type 23 or Type 45 anymore. Nuclear cooperation. Britain is doubling down on the one thing Kremlin planners never gamble with: deterrence. The Dreadnought-class submarines will replace the venerable Vanguards in the 2030s, modernizing Britain's continuous at-sea deterrent. In July 2025, London and Paris signed the Northwood Declaration, a once-in-a-generation deepening of Franco-British nuclear coordination that set up a joint steering group and pledged tighter consultation in extreme crises. Translation: Europe's two nuclear powers will think and, if necessary, signal together. It's the kind of move that forces Moscow to spread its attention and its missiles thinner. And then there's AUKUS. The UK will field SSN AUKUS attack submarines in the late 2030s. Fast, quiet, heavily armed. Critics point to industrial bottlenecks in reactor manufacturing and yard capacity, and they're not wrong. But the strategic effect already exists. A trilateral submarine ecosystem tying British, American, and Australian undersea power together across the Indo-Pacific and back into the North Atlantic. For any adversary, that's a nightmare sonar symphony. More money, better tanks, smarter jets, nastier ships, tighter nukes. That's the muscle. Now, the mission.
Ukraine support. Britain was the first to cross the long-range Rubicon, sending Storm Shadow cruise missiles to Kiev. The results were headline-proof. In September 2023, Storm Shadows helped carve open Sevastopol, wrecking a dry dock, mauling the landing ship Minsk and the submarine Rostov-on-Don, and later striking the Black Sea Fleet's headquarters itself. That forced Russia to push major combatants east to Novorossiysk. This isn't symbolism. It's logistics and strategy detonating together. Britain also flooded Ukraine with anti-armor tools when they mattered most. The UK has provided more than 12,000 anti-tank weapons, NLAW, Javelin, Brimstone, helping turn early Russian armored thrusts into smoking piles of regret. And London didn't stop there. Artillery shells have kept coming, with 140,000 delivered since January 2025 alone, part of a wider munitions push that finally acknowledges the reality of drone-era attrition. Here's today's headline story: drones. Britain has shifted from "let's buy a few" to "industrialize the swarm." In 2025, London set a target: deliver 100,000 drones to Ukraine, up from roughly 10,000 the prior year, backed by £350 million in funding and co-leadership of the UK-Latvia Drone Coalition. That's one of the largest single-nation drone commitments to date, and it's reshaping trench warfare, FPV kamikazes, ISR eyes in the sky, and long-range one-way strike platforms built with UK brains and Ukrainian improvisation. If you want to see Putin's nightmare in miniature, watch a $500 quadcopter land inside a $5 million air defense radar. Training the force that fights. Since June 2022, the UK-led Operation Interflex has trained over 56,000 Ukrainian soldiers. Infantry basics, leadership, breaching, drones, medevac, the brutal essentials of a modern war. The program just got extended through 2026, and the feedback loop is real. Ukrainians bring fresh frontline lessons. British trainers adapt syllabi within weeks. It's NATO doctrine, rewritten by people who were in a trench last month. Did you know? British engineers and MBDA adapted ASR-AAM air-to-air missiles for ground launch, providing Ukraine with a flexible point defense option against low-flying cruise missiles and drones. That's British improvisation at speed. Take what you have, make it meaner, get it to the fight. Intelligence and cyber, the quiet war. GCHQ and the National Cybersecurity Center have supported Ukraine since day one, hardening networks, warning of GRU spearphishing and infrastructure attacks, and sharing indicators of compromise that keep Ukrainian systems online when it matters. British intelligence also helps shape the battlefield. Declassified imagery, signals intercepts, and pattern-of-life analysis that shorten Ukrainian kill chains from hours to minutes. In public, this shows up as technical advisories and sanctions notices. In private, it shows up as a Russian battery that stopped transmitting 5 minutes ago. Cyber operations aren't just defense. UK-led work has helped Ukraine ride out waves of wiper malware, DDoS barrages, and attempted blackouts, while exposing Russian hackers, naming, shaming, and sanctioning to raise the cost of every attack. If Russia's doctrine relies on hitting your lights before it hits your lines, Britain's answer is simple: keep the lights on and make the next attack harder. Naval power and deterrence. The Royal Navy has turned the North and Baltic Seas into a neighbourhood watch with teeth. UK-led Joint Expeditionary Force partners, Nordics, Baltics, the Netherlands, conduct patrols, exercises, and undersea infrastructure protection that complicate any Russian mischief from the High North to Bornholm. Add NATO's Steadfast Defender mega exercise and the RN's renewed anti-ship bite, and you get deterrence that feels very immediate in Tromsø, Tallinn, and Gdansk. Coalitions and diplomacy, herding European cats. In May 2025, the UK and EU signed a new security and defence partnership,
formalizing a reset that unlocks joint missions, sanctions coordination, and industrial projects. 2 months later, Britain and France announced the Northwood Declaration, nuclear coordination that sent a very specific message to Moscow. At the same time, London targeted Russia's Shadow Fleet tankers and pushed a tougher oil price cap, reading Russia's economy the way artillerymen read a map. This isn't just hard power, it's policy that constricts the Kremlin's oxygen. The UK's 100,000 drone goal isn't just gear, it's coalition leadership that drags others forward. Latvia builds 12,000 of them. Britain funds, tests, and integrates. Russia now has to assume every trench camera might be a British-funded eye, and every incoming FPV a British accelerated idea. That changes how far Russia dares to mass. How does this hit Putin's calculus? First, British long-range missiles forced the Black Sea Fleet to huddle away from Crimea, shrinking Russia's sea-launched strike options and disrupting shipyard repair cycles. Second, British anti-tank and artillery pipelines raised the cost of every Russian advance measured in burnt hulls and exhausted brigades. Third, British intel and cyber support blunted Russia's hybrid edge. Finally, Britain's coalition building, EU Pact, JEF, Poland missile co-production, US alignment where possible, denies Moscow the one thing it wants most: a divided West. Russian reaction has been predictable and revealing. Moscow blasted the Storm Shadow decision as extremely hostile and warned of proportionate responses, then fumed as its ships left Sevastopol anyway. After the Northwood Declaration, the Kremlin pivoted to a new talking point: include British and French arsenals in future nuclear talks, a tacit admission that London and Paris now weigh heavier in the balance. The louder the threats, the clearer the signal that British moves are landing where it hurts: domestic opinion and political weather. British support for Ukraine remains broad, but intensity is mixed. Polling this summer found about 43% of Britons want to maintain current levels of support to Kyiv, with a smaller share favoring increases. Roughly 4 in 10 support higher defense spending, even with trade-offs. In other words, the public will back the mission, but expects competence, value for money, and visible results. That's a mandate, not a blank check. Setbacks and friction, because this is real life. The NAO flagged F-35 availability and spares shortfalls. Surface-to-air defenses at home need depth, more Skysaber, more Aster, more sensors, especially as Russia experiments with long-range harassment and space-based intimidation. Industry is racing to expand submarine and missile production, but reactors and shipyards don't grow overnight. The task for London is ruthless prioritization, money where the bottlenecks are, timelines that survive contact with reality, and hard choices about variant mixes and stockpiles, risks and escalation management. The UK's strategy is to arm Ukraine for decisive defence, while minimising pretexts for direct NATO-Russia confrontation. That means weapon choices with strategic signalling baked in, Storm Shadow with target guidance limits, ASRAAM repurposed for point defence, training on UK soil, and tight intel discipline. The nuclear angle is managed jointly with France. Clear, calm, credible messages about what would trigger a catastrophic response, and constant exercises to make sure those messages are believed. Cyber and space add complexity. Expect more Russian jamming, spoofing, and satellite stalking. But Britain is already investing in resilience and coalition playbooks to keep the lights on and the links up. Did you know? The UK-led JEF gives London a way to move fast with northern allies below the NATO Article 5 threshold. Handy when mysterious seabed incidents need a response in hours, not communiques in weeks. It's the quiet power of minilateralism. Small group, big impact. What did we learn? Britain isn't just shipping kit, it's shaping the battlefield, shaping the alliance, and shaping Russian risk. That's 3 levers Putin can't ignore. Future plans straight up. Expect the RAF to field ECRS Mk2 radars and more long-range weapons. Expect carrier strike groups with bigger F-35 air wings more often. Expect the Royal Navy's anti-ship renaissance to mature as Type 26/31 come online. Expect Dreadnought steel to keep rising in Barrow. Expect SSNA AUKUS to soak up money and management attention. Expect the drone industrial base to stay hot. On the diplomatic side, London will keep pressing sanctions enforcement, oil price caps, shadow fleet, and financial choke points, because every ruble not earned is a missile not built. And on the ground, Interflex 2.0 will train the Ukrainian army we all hope never has to fight this war again. A final callback. In 2022, Russian doctrine assumed Europe would tire, that Britain would drift, that coalitions would fray. In 2025, the UK is doing the opposite, rebuilding the arsenal, innovating at speed, funding the fight, and binding Europe closer than at any time since the Cold War. That's the thing Putin feared most. Not a single mighty gesture, but a relentless grind of capability and cohesion that makes aggression unprofitable. So here's the question to end on. Will Moscow ever regain the initiative? Or is this the start of a lasting shift in Europe's balance of power? One British drone, one frigate, one trained soldier at a time. The big takeaway? Britain decided to matter again in hard power. And when Britain decides to matter, autocrats tend to discover what the word deterrence really means.